To start off, I just moved into a new house in the suburbs, and I already have a scary story to share. A couple of days after the move, I was in the living room watching TV. The clock read 11 p.m., and it was snowing heavily outside. Suddenly, there was a frantic knock at the door. I slowly got up and walked to the door. Keeping the chain on, I slowly opened it and looked through the crack. At the doorstep was a young woman, probably in her mid-20s. I asked through the door what she wanted, and she told me while shaking that she had crashed her car a few minutes away and needed my help. Against my better judgment, I undid the chain and opened the door. She thanked me for helping her and asked if she could use my phone. I gave her a phone, and she went into the kitchen to make a call. I waited for a few minutes, and I realized that I couldn't hear her talking to anyone. The door connecting the kitchen to the living room was closed, so I couldn't see what was going on. Curiously, I pressed my ear against the door, and I could hear her talking to someone in an extremely hushed voice. I strained to hear what she was saying, and could only make out a bit of it. She said something along the lines of, "When I give the signal, you come in and get him." I assumed she was talking about me, and I started to panic slightly. Before she could come back, I tiptoed upstairs to my bedroom. I grabbed a small pistol that I kept in a chest under my bed for protection and tucked it into my pocket just in case. I tiptoed back into the living room, and thankfully, the woman hadn't finished her call yet. I pressed my ear back against the door, and I heard footsteps approaching. I quickly pulled away my head, and the door opened. The woman told me that her boyfriend was coming over to pick her up. She then tried to make small talk with me, and I tried my best to act naturally. After about 20 minutes of talking, I heard a heavy knock on the front door. The woman told me that it must be her boyfriend. My stomach churned, and I put my hand on my pistol. I opened the door with the chain on and asked who was out there. I heard a man's voice telling me that he was here to pick up his girlfriend. I turned back to the woman, and she was just staring blankly at me. Playing along, I undid the chain and opened the door. I greeted the tall, stocky man at my door, and he came inside. He didn't say anything to me, just looked at me as he entered. I told them both to have a good night, to which the man pulled a butcher knife out of his back pocket and pointed it at me. "Give me your wallet and anything else valuable," the man said. I stood there for a split second before pulling out my pistol and telling them to get out of my house. As soon as they saw my gun, the man dropped the knife and they both bolted out of the door. I slammed it shut and locked it before calling the police. An officer came the next morning to talk to me, and I told him everything. He said that he and his partner surveyed the neighborhood and found no one suspicious. He told me to be wary of letting strangers into my house and bid me a good day. If there is anything I've learned from this experience, it is to never let strangers into your dwelling, especially after dark.
I live in Canada, and during the winter, it gets really cold outside. Not to mention the huge blizzards that show up here and there. So a few nights ago, I was driving to my relative's home for a Christmas party / family reunion. They lived in the countryside, so the roads leading to their house were almost completely devoid of other homes. So, driving down a road like that at 6 or 7 p.m. in the middle of winter means that I could barely see past the beam from my headlights. About halfway through my journey, I saw lights appear in the distance. As I got closer, I saw a black SUV parked at the side of the road. The car's red taillights were flashing, and there was a man, presumably the driver, standing next to it. As I drove past the car, I saw the man staring me down. He did not break his gaze until I couldn't see him anymore. I was creeped the hell out, thinking of that man staring at me. But I quickly forgot about it as I continued. Eventually, I made it to my family's house and greeted them. We had a great Christmas party, and I loved watching the kids opening their presents and talking to my brother, whom I hadn't seen in a few years. The rest of my family started to leave around 11 at night, and I hung around till about midnight before I headed off myself. By the time I left, it had started snowing quite a bit, to the point where the snowflakes made it harder for me to see what was in front of me. About an hour into my drive home, I see the same black SUV on the side of the road again. As I approached it, I couldn't see the driver standing next to it anymore. He wasn't in the driver's seat either. For whatever reason, I decided to pull over and see if the guy needed my help. Even today, I still have no idea what persuaded me to stop the car. Maybe I felt guilty that I didn't pull over when I first saw him. I don't know. I stepped out of my car and crossed the street to the SUV. I slowly crept up to the driver's side window and looked in. There was no one in the front seats. As I walked toward the back of the car, I caught a very pungent odour. It smelled like rotting animals. The stench seemed to get stronger as I got closer to the back. I didn't dare open the hatchback and see what was causing it. As I was looking at the hatchback, I heard a scream in the distance. I looked in the direction of the forest, but it was completely pitch black in there. Then, I heard another scream. It sounded like someone was being tortured. I was too afraid to go into the woods and check it out. And then, out of nowhere, I heard fast footsteps crashing through the underbrush towards me. I sprinted back to my car and jumped in. As I started the engine, I looked back out the window and I saw whom I thought was the driver stomping out of the woods towards me. I say whom I thought because he was wearing a scream mask, and in his hands was a blood-stained axe. I stepped on it and sped out of there. The man chased my car for a few seconds, but I quickly lost him. I immediately called the police and told them what had happened. I mentioned where I thought the SUV was, and they said they'd check it out. I drove home feeling very shaken. The next morning, a police officer came to talk to me about the incident. He told me that they'd found the SUV, but the driver was gone. Upon their search, they'd found 6 full body bags in the hatchback. Now I know what was making that putrid smell. When the cops went into the woods, where I heard the scream, all they found was a large puddle of blood-soaked snow. I was absolutely horrified, knowing that I was inches away from losing my life to that psychopath. So, crazy axe-wielding guy wearing a scream mask, let's never cross paths again.
When I was a kid, I grew up in one of those small, tight-knit communities. My childhood home was located at the end of a cul-de-sac, and all the houses there had kids around my age. We quickly became a close group, and we hung out every weekend. Some of the best games we played together were manhunt and flashlight tag. Every Friday and Saturday night, we would all meet up and since we were neighbors, we would use all our front and backyards for the games. For years, these games were a weekly tradition for us. However, one night in the middle of January, something happened that dampened the fun in our tradition. On that night, there were 7 of us all together. Even though it was the middle of winter and it was snowing heavily outside, we didn't let that get in the way of our tradition. Usually, we split into teams when we played, but this time, we decided to have one hunter find everyone else. If someone got tagged, they had to join the hunter and tag the rest of us. During the first game, my friend Kevin was the hunter, and the rest of us scattered. I ran through the snow and hid behind my backyard shed. Since it was snowing, I knew Kevin could easily follow my footprints, so I was ready to run if he came too close. I spent about 15 minutes behind that shed when I heard footsteps crunching through the snow. I carefully poked my head around the corner and saw one of my other friends creeping around the backyard. Shortly after pulling my head back, I heard the commotion of my teammate getting tagged. I looked back and saw Kevin and my other friend walking back the way they came. I decided to move to a different spot, so I walked through the snow toward a small wooded area behind my house. I walked a few feet into the woods and hid behind a fallen tree. A few minutes later, I once again heard footsteps. I looked around, but I couldn't see anyone in the darkness. The footsteps got closer, and thinking it was one of the hunters, I got up ready to run. Whoever was in the woods with me started charging at me, and in no time at all, the figure came into view. My blood ran cold as I soon realized that that wasn't any of my friends. A tall, stocky man stopped in front of me and looked down at me. I stared back at him, and we just locked eyes for a few moments. A huge, predatory smile spread across the man's face, and he suddenly lunged at me. I missed him by just a few inches and sprinted out of the woods toward my house. I ran around to the front yard and strangely found all my friends there, along with my parents. I ran over to them, and my parents gave me a huge hug before inquiring where I was. They said a police officer had just stopped by to warn them about a serial killer in the area. For the second time that night, my blood froze. I told them what happened to me, and everyone started freaking out. We called the police, and I told the officers everything. They searched the woods and ended up finding the man hiding under a log. They arrested him and found a small camp he had set up, containing a small tent, some canned food, and a blood-stained machete. My friends and I were absolutely horrified, and our parents ended up banning all of us from entering the woods at night. To this day, I occasionally have nightmares about the incident, and I will never forget that haunting smile on that man's face. What's up, everybody? This is the Lone Wolf here. Thank you so much for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed these 3 Snowstorm stories. First things first, I'd like to make a quick announcement. School is starting up again this Tuesday, so until summer break, I'll be going back to making 1 video each weekend, so I just want to let you guys know about that. Also, I would like to give a big thank you to Aussie Creeps for teaming up with me in this episode. He's an awesome horror narrator, and I highly recommend you check out his channel. There will be a link to his channel in the description below, as well as an icon that will appear at the end of this video. So if you guys enjoyed listening to his narration, feel free to check him out and show him some love. As always, don't forget to like, share, and subscribe, and hit the bell for notifications, and join the Lone Wolf Pack. If you guys want to send me a message, there will be a link in the description for both my email and my Twitter account, so if you guys have any personal scary stories that you want to share with me, feel free to leave me a message on either, and I'll use your story in a future video. There will also be links in the description for the music artists that I use in this video, as well as the specific tracks in case you're interested in the music. And finally, if you guys have any constructive criticism, feel free to leave me a comment. I'm always looking for new ways to make this channel better, and I welcome all ideas. Until next time, you guys, stay spooky. And remember, the hunt begins when the moon is full. See you soon.